was a sailor. I worked on the merchant marine all his life.
On the Westerlunds side? Or on your
My
same?
grandpa, yeah.
Yeah. Oh. You knocking the tripod right over. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey, Pepper.
yeah. You wanna?
Oh, okay.
You're
getting,
cute,
oh,
kitty,
now you're
Pepper.
getting interested. All
Cute
right.
kitty.
We will adjust. There we go. Here, you bumped it a little bit. Huh. Wow. Let's see. What do I? So how many Westerlands were in this area? So Uncle Elmer, so your mom's.
Well, it was let's see, my mom,
Mhm.
Elmer, Leon, I guess Carl. I guess that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah, and,
all of them.
yeah.
Hmm.
And how they came here, I guess I don't know. I assume the same thing. Everybody came from Chicago
Right.
up here eventually, and then yeah, and they ran the farm. And Uncle Carl was an electrician,
Right.
and he owned that. Well, you on the land that he owned down
Yeah,
by Long
yeah.
Lake.
Hmm. Let's see. And your mom and dad both spoke Swedish.
Yes, yeah, fluently. That was actually their first language,
Yeah.
but they were determined when we were. I mean, I've been told this anyway. They made a decision that they would never teach the kids. That they forced themselves to speak English. So they would talk to each other when they didn't want us to know what was going on in
Yeah.
Swedish, but they wouldn't teach us Swedish, which I feel bad about.
Yeah, so they purposely kind of kept that from you. Did you
Yeah.
pick up any words here or there a little bit?
Well, I can swear fluently in
You can.
Swedish. Every time my dad would hit his thumb with a hammer or
Yeah, you
something.
would hear the Swedish swear words coming out. That's funny. And did you, when you were growing up in high school or in college, did you take a foreign language? Did you learn a foreign language yourself?
Well, I took I don't remember many years, in German,
Okay.
and I can still say Danke. That's about what I remember a few phrases.
Yeah, yeah. I know. Language
But
is really
unless
the-
you use it,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's gone.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I totally feel the same way. So, okay, so before you met mom, so like in high school or college before you met mom, did you date other girls like in high school or anyone you remember?
Um, well, yeah. I mean, I was a prom king for.
Oh, I don't
Yeah,
think I knew
yeah,
that.
yeah. I get
Okay.
the annual books in there, so I was.
Yeah.
Well, I don't. I mean, you date. Like you're in high school.
Yeah.
You just
Right.
date somebody, and the. Well, I suppose I can mention it now, but the girl that I just adored was Renee Rogstad, and we dated for a while in high school, and until I met your mom, I did everything on earth to try and convince her to. Well, I all but asked her to marry me, but she wasn't interested.
She had eyes for somebody else, maybe.
Yeah, well, she ended up going to a school in South Carolina, and that
Okay.
kind of ended up. I see her in the summer sometimes, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Huh.
So she was somehow that was it. That was the only other girl I ever had any
Serious girl.
serious thoughts about.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
So when you were growing up here, other than helping your dad with the farm and the cows, did you have a job outside of that when you were like in high school? Did you have a side job?
Yeah, well, at that time, well, it still exists. The canning factory in Cumberland,
Okay.
and my dad let us grow. Well, Ed and I we grew cucumbers and beans, and then my dad would anyway, I mean, we're talking about sacks full of them.
Okay, yeah.
And then my dad would take them over to Cumberland, and we would get the money. And I don't, at that time, was, it seemed like a lot of money. It was
Right.
just a few bucks.
Right.
So that was our spending money.
Okay. So you had your own little like farm stand, fresh.
No, we never,
Oh.
no. We would just take them
You'd
to,
sell them into the can. Okay.
right,
gotcha.
directly to the canning company. I mean, we would have bags full of, like you can see how the cucumbers still grow. I learned how to grow
Right.
cucumbers when I was pretty young.
Oh my goodness. And when you were in college, how did you pay for college?
Well, and I had this athletic scholarship,
Mm-hmm.
and then I had a partial, after I quit wrestling, I had a partial scholarship, and I had enough to pay tuition.
Mm-hmm.
And other than that, I don't know I borrowed enough money, so by the time I graduated, I don't remember, but I know it took me and Dottie about 10 years to pay my college loan off.
Student loans.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, let's see. Your era, a lot of people ended up going into the military. Did you
Yeah.
ever tell me about your experience with that?
Well, I was in, it was mandatory at that time. I was in reserve, it was part of the,
At the draft?
at the University of Wisconsin. You had to, every male
Yeah.
was in reserve officer training. I mean, you didn't have an option.
Okay.
You were in it.
Yeah.
And they could draft you anytime they wanted to, of course. And so that was when I graduated, was in the middle of the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
So I was all prepared to go, because I would have been a second lieutenant, and I was not very excited about that, because life expectancy of a second lieutenant was not very good. You'd be shot in the back of the head or the front of the head.
Yeah.
But anyway, I went over you've probably heard this story. I went over to Minneapolis for the physical,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought, I'm in the best shape, because
Right, yeah.
and at that time my vision was perfect, and actually I could hear. And I thought, Ed said, well, what we ought to do is take some target practice the day before you go. So we shot skeet for about 2 hours without any air protection. And this was pretty sneaky, but I'm not sure this is why it happened either. But anyway, when they did the audio part, the doctor said, well, we're going to have to move you to not 4F, but delayed draft. There's a classification for it, because you couldn't, I don't think you could hear artillery shells come in. And I said, oh yeah, I'm sure I got to hear him.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I got moved back into a different classification.
Okay.
And by the time my name came up again, the war was over.
Wow.
So then they dropped the draft. So he said,
You lucked
that's
out.
fine with me.
Yeah.
I like staying alive.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that was, I still, to this day, I still don't know whether I lost my hearing temporarily because of that, or maybe I've never had my ears tested since then, so
Yeah.
maybe I still don't hear it. I don't know. I don't care anymore, I guess.
You hear enough.
I can hear it good now.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna pause again so I can